Hello everybody and welcome to Chapter 10. I'm sad to say this is our last lecture that we'll have online, but you will be coming to intensive, so I will see you all face to face very, very soon. So Chapter 10 is called New Journeys, and the aims for Chapter 10 are to explore the purpose and elements of a personal framework for practice, consider critical reflective practice and use of self, to discuss the rationale for and processes of ongoing learning and professional development, to explore future challenges and issues within a social work and human service practice. Now, this is, I guess, the interesting thing about this is what your capstone course is going to be. So your capstone course is 7063 HSV, Critical Reflective Practice, and that sits alongside your second and final placement. So it's really important to start thinking about it now, because if you've got this ready, you'll get a lot more from your placements. And remember that little book we said right at the very beginning, start writing down your theories, your ideologies, your different skills. That will really help you to develop that framework for practice as you go. And it will also very much help you in the capstone unit, which is 7063 HSV. So just for your information now, in that unit you will be writing 2 critical reflections. So if you look at the aims here, consider critical reflective practice. At the end of your degree, you'll be writing 2 critical reflections, really trying to unpack how your practice framework has come into being and all of the different elements that you draw on. And you will be designing, creating and presenting your very own personal framework for practice. So hence, exploring the purpose and elements of a personal framework for practice now is actually very pertinent. So developing a practice frameworks. Practice frameworks provide a foundation for practice. So they're really how you develop your own personal style of practice. What are the theories you draw on? What are the skills that you use? What knowledge do you tend to reach for? And I guess it's just now worth starting to think about, remember those questions we asked about what is your sort of personal preference? What areas of social work practice do you lean to? And we sort of talked about those therapeutic, perhaps more individual ways of working, and then we talked about that more strategic policy way of working. We talked, I think I gave you some examples that I come from a community practice framework, so I really look at some of those collective ethics and that community and sustainability and environmental way of working. So it's just worth starting to jot some ideas down now, and it might change. You might learn new things, you might learn new theories, things inspire you as you go, but very important to start thinking about it now. So a practice framework is a combination of knowledge, values and skills. So we've touched on different types of knowledge already. We've thought about empirical knowledge, theoretical knowledge, personal knowledge, procedural knowledge, practice wisdom. All of those different types of knowledge are important when you're developing that framework for practice. Values. What are your beliefs, your ideologies, your ethics? What place does the AASW Code of Ethics have in your practice framework? Which bits do you strongly agree with? Which bits are maybe more problematic with some of your personal values? What are the skills? What are the practice skills you've got? What have you got life skills? What skills will you develop? All of the skills that you're going to practice in the second week of the intensive, they are all very relevant to your developing practice framework. So, practitioners should be able to articulate their practice framework. So the aim is, by the end of your degree, you will be confident and competent in articulating your own practice framework, which is also very helpful because when you go for a job, quite often they ask, what is your framework for practice? And if you've got a very in-depth knowledge of your own framework, then you'll be able to articulate that quite eloquently and give examples as well, and relate that back to perhaps placement examples, work examples, personal experiences, and that will help you demonstrate that you hold all of the knowledge, the values and the skills that they are looking for. Or, alternatively, you might decide that the job's not for you, but it's important to be able to articulate it well. So, 4 basic elements. Well, you can start now. You already have knowledge, values, skills and use of self. So even if you have absolutely no social work or human service experience at all, you will have knowledge, values, skills and self that you can already draw on. So knowledge, what do I know? What do I know now? What did I learn in my previous degree? What did I learn in my previous jobs, from volunteering, from my family? Values, what do I believe in? What do I value? What social work values do I strongly resonate with? Skills, what skills do I have? What jobs have I done? What skills have I learned? And use of self in practice. So how do you use yourself in a practice situation? So we envisage that your practice framework will change and develop as you go through your social work degree, because you will be exposed to new theories, new skills, new experiences, and you'll add all of these to your repertoire. So this is just a sort of quite a simple picture of practice framework with yourself in the middle, because that's where it all comes together, and really just, what do I know, what skills do I have, what do I value. There's other elements that you can add in there as well, but good to start with knowledge, skills and values. So requirements of practice frameworks. So a practice framework should be consistent with the purpose, values and ethics of the profession. Yep, I guess that's fair enough, isn't it? Capable of being communicated to others. That's its concepts, principles and assumptions. So they should be clearly described and defined and make sense to laypersons. So, easy to understand, no jargon, use of examples are good. Yeah, just so that it's really clear what you know, what you can do, what you believe in, and how can you communicate that to others. You might want to explore your professional self. So if you think about the consistency with the purpose, values and ethics of the profession, what does you as a professional look like as well? And when you're communicating it to others, have you got any themes that are already starting to emerge? Have you got any strong interests? Whether it's might want to, as we said, look at more of that individual or therapeutic type of social work. Or perhaps you're more child-focused and your framework will centre around child development theories and those types of things. So there might be some themes that you already have that you'd be interested in building on. So, a framework has a real life purpose as well. It's not just there to, it's not just sort of hanging out there in space. It actually has a real tangible reason. And it helps the worker analyse and understand complex and often chaotic situations. It provides you with guidance and direction during various phases of a change process. And you usually rest your practice framework on empirical data. So it's based on facts and careful systematic observations and theories. So you've got things that you can draw on in situations that are perhaps new to you. So critical reflective practice. Critical reflective practice is key to the development of a practice framework. So need for more explicit connections across knowledge, theory and skills. So how does knowledge, theory and skills fit with practice? How do you use knowledge in practice? What knowledge do you use? What's effective? What theories are you drawing on? Why are you drawing on them? Are there other theories that might be better? What skills have you got? What skills do you need to learn? And where do your values fit and sit within that? So critical reflective practice helps us unpack what we're doing and why. Is it effective? What are we drawn to? Where are our assumptions? Where are our biases? And it combines reflexivity, and critical thinking. So you'll soon very shortly come across reflection in action and reflection on action. So the different types of reflection that you will do and undertake in placement. So really take the opportunity to talk to your supervisor about these things. Okay, some definitions. Critical reflective practice. It needs critical thinking. Okay, so the art of thinking about your thinking while you are thinking in order to make your thinking better, more clear, more accurate, or more defensible. There we go. We also need reflection. The continual re-evaluation of personal beliefs, assumptions and ideas in the light of experience and data and the generation of alternative interpretations of those experiences and data. So it's that constant, some people say it's a spiral, you know, where you're learning upon learning upon learning. And there are many techniques. So some examples here are reflective questions, pictorial representations, think aloud observation and reflective recall, knowledge mapping, learning logs, journaling, blogging, lots of different things that you can do. Now, I suppose a little heads up here is the textbook that you will need for your critical reflective practice course at the end of your degree is called Critical Thinking and Professional Judgment for Social Work. So that's Critical Thinking and Professional Judgment for Social Work. And it's by Lynn Rutter, Rutter, and Keith Brown, Brown. Now I'm just saying that now because I know that when I went to get my copy, there are heaps and heaps of second-hand copies online for like a couple of dollars. So if you were to get that now, it actually helps answer some of these questions that you might have about reflection and critical thinking as you go through placement. And you'll be then well ahead for when you're actually trying to develop that for your practice framework as well. And also sometimes these online books can take a while to come, so I just say that it's worth a thought to perhaps get one for a couple of dollars now and then use it while you go. Okay, use of self. I like that. Self is a mechanism for practice. I say, use of self, that's our own toolbox, but I think mechanism for practice has a more formal ring to it, don't you think? Okay, so use of self. Self is a mechanism for practice. There is a need for self-awareness, how we behave, how we impact on others, and how we build relationships. So some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves are, who am I? Why am I the way I am? And how does this affect my practice? So I think those last two, why am I the way I am and how does this affect my practice, are really, really important. So continuing to learn. So I was just going back here. I think it's just really important that we think of use of self in all of our interactions while we're on placement and just really get to know yourself. I say warts and all for me, so talking about me, because it really does help you become a better practitioner. I guess I am fascinated by people. I find people's stories exceedingly fascinating. Now, when I was very young and naive, I thought it was wonderful to get as much information about people's story as I possibly could. But then, as you get older and wiser, you've got the parameters of the organisation, and you've got the outcomes that the organisation's funded for, and you've got the time that you're allocated to achieve those outcomes, and you've also got a lot of information that isn't actually relevant and sometimes can be damaging for people to bring up again. So I have learned over time to manage myself much, much better to get the information that's required for the job, on the most basic level, how to use myself appropriately to, minimise or maximise the information that's required, suitable, appropriate, helpful. And and also that helps my care of self, which we'll come to later, because at times in the past I've had information overload and I'm holding all of this information that isn't actually relevant to the purpose that I'm trying to achieve, but it's still quite, it could be traumatic information, it's challenging information, or it's something that's still relevant, but you're kind of holding it out there, not sure what to do with it. So for me, that's a long-winded way of saying, sorry, that it's just constantly questioning why am I the way I am and how does it affect my practice are really critical questions.